In this week's Wild World of Weather, the tropics are the story around multiple parts of the globe. We had Tropical Storm Hilary make landfall as a hurricane in Mexico before impacting the southwestern United States at the start of this week. Areas in and around Palm Springs, California, were swamped with heavy rains. Debris and mud blocked all the roadways in the San Bernardino Mountains. Cathedral City, about 110 miles east of Los Angeles, was left blanketed in what you see in this video, a muddy mess. Freeways were shut down in some places due to the water covering the roadways. Hilary led to the first tropical storm warning to be issued in Southern California on record. Now, farther east in the Atlantic Basin, which is our side, Tropical Storm Franklin made landfall in the Dominican Republic on Wednesday. It's left at least one person dead with hundreds of thousands without power or water. Santo Domingo saw wind gusts around 40 miles per hour, so Franklin wasn't very strong, but the mountains of Hispaniola caused major rainfall issues from even the weaker storms. Franklin is forecast to become the second hurricane of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season as it lifts out to sea. Puerto Rico and Haiti also experienced heavy rainfall from that storm. Now, heavy rains led to deadly flooding in Chile. 3 people were killed in the floodwaters on Tuesday, and thousands have been left homeless. More than 37,000 people were evacuated, according to the Ministry of Interior, following an intense atmospheric river that dumped multiple inches of rain. El Niño's climate impact does influence the weather in the southern hemisphere, which is providing extra moisture for those rainfall events. More than 200 fires have broken out in Greece since Monday. Some of the fires are still extreme, according to the fire brigade spokesperson. Since Tuesday, 93 fires have erupted, including the fire that burned through Mount Parnilta, the largest forest bordering Athens. The fires have been fanned by strong winds in the area. Thousands of acres of forest and land areas have been destroyed by those fires. The smoke has been impacting air quality across the region, so we're not the only ones dealing with fire issues. You can see those problems on the other side of the pond in Europe now. We're just not used to the fire problems here locally.
This was one wild week of weather. All right, thanks for that, Zach.